we're here in the middle of the summer, and I think for a lot of people, summer is ice cream. I know here in Vermont, for us, it's maple creamies. It's for me personally, it's chocolate vanilla twist. I love maple on my pancakes, but haven't quite gotten the maple ice cream yet. I know it's a sin as a native Vermonter, but also I'm a huge fan of a good gelato. Or hard ice cream. We're here in the land of Ben and Jerry's in Vermont. And the other day, I was fortunate enough to meet Debbie Hendrickx, who is the founder of Swell Gelato for Dogs. And I thought that was pretty cool because, there's not a lot of, we're in the time of the great fresh, frozen, fresh shelf stable debate, but that's all relative to food. We don't really have a ton of, feel good frozen treat products for dogs. And I think the concept and the novelty of being able to give your dog a gelato in the middle of the summer is really cool. So I'm thrilled to have Debbie on today to talk about how she got into selling dog gelato. Spoiler alert, prior to this, she was at Nordstrom. So first time, entry into the pet industry, and she's doing really well for herself. I think, Debbie, you said 1,600 stores right now.
Yep. Yep.
Well, congratulations and welcome to Petworking.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. I'm simultaneously watching you on one screen and then looking at a collage of your products on your website on the other. And I have to say, I know when we first talked, I asked if you had distribution in Vermont because I wanted to go and get one for Peony before we had this episode. But Vermont is one of the few states that you haven't quite tapped into yet. So maybe I'm gonna next time I'm up in Canada, I'll have to pick up a product in Montreal
Yes, you're not that far away. Yes, 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 absolutely.
because you are so 1,600 stores across Canada and the US.
Yep, most of those in the US, but we are on the east coast of Canada too now. Yes, you're pretty much in one of the four states where I don't have distribution yet, which go figure, right? Because you're in the very tip of the country up there. But we're working on it. We'll get there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're going to get to that because I know, right now, in the, from the business perspective of, pet food, cold chain distribution is a huge issue for a lot of companies. It's very expensive. And you can either go the D2C route and do it yourself, and that's, very expensive and requires a significant amount of capital investment, or you partner with one of the distributors that has cold chain capabilities, but uh, in a lot of those cases, you end up sacrificing a lot on the margins. Before we get there, though, I loved hearing your story about how you came from Nordstrom and were a buyer there, correct?
Yes, yep. I was a
And
fashion buyer for 18 years.
and as you said, that kind of taught you the business of retail and marketing, and I think that's so apparent in the aesthetics of the packaging and the product that you've designed. But the tagline, you traded the 4-inch heels for. I thought that was great. So please tell. I'd love for you to tell people about that.
Yeah. So, like you said, I was at Nordstrom for 18 years and loved it. I absolutely loved it. I've always appreciated fashion, aesthetics, like all the good stuff, right? And what girl doesn't like to go to work dressed up like she's not prom, but like she's going to like a formal party? Because that's basically how it was when you work in the corporate office. And so, I did everything there from managing a department, working in the store directly with the customers to doing the buying and, the financial planning, all these things. And while I was in that career, I always thought that, well, that's what I do. This is my field. This is what I'm good at. This is what I know, right? And I never in the million years would have thought that what I learned there would be so valuable for what I'm doing now, which I could not think of two more different different paths, right? High fashion or making gelato for dogs, essentially starting out in a dog park. Like it doesn't get more different than that. But the lessons that I learned along the way were priceless, just priceless. Like really the customer experience, what makes them happy. It's just not about the one product that they buy, but what's behind it. Like what makes them happy? What makes them leave the store excited? What are they looking for? And then, on the back end, when I was a buyer, I learned obviously the ins and outs of that and budgeting and, working with vendors and getting your stuff distributed and like all that stuff. So you add it all up and I'm like, oh my God, I just had the perfect education in the fashion world. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was kind of eye-opening when you sit back and think about that.
Yeah. I mean, and clear, I mean, the proof is in, your store count, the reviews of your products, it's very impressive. But I mean, what was the light bulb moment? I know you talked about, you've always made gelato at home with your family. What was the light bulb moment that you said, I should be making this for dogs, and that's what I'm going to do with my career?
Yeah, it just kind of happened, but really, so while I was happy at Nordstrom the whole time, like I loved my job. Towards the end, I was trying different things because I'm a person who likes to challenge myself, right? So I was in private label, then I went into product development. It became more and more corporate to a point where I was like not feeling it anymore, right? And I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, this is kind of I feel like it might be time to leave. And then as it happened, they went through like a big restructure in my position at the time. Because at that point, I was in what I call the problem solving department. It got cut. And so I had to come up with some game plan, but I wasn't ready to jump right into it. I'd worked hard for 18 years. I felt like I deserved a summer off. I wanted to do nothing really, but I quickly realized that, well, all my friends were working, so the summer was going to be quite boring. So I looked at it as a unique opportunity to do something different, right? Something
Right.
that's like a once in a lifetime opportunity. And like you said, I was already making gelato for my family, for my own dogs, because I wanted them to like participate in the fun of when we're tasting my homemade gelato. I wanted them to have something too that was safe for them and that they liked. So, and I love dogs. The more dogs, the better. My idea of a good time is like surround me with dogs. I love that. So I came up with this idea kind of in the middle of the night, in one of those sleepless nights where at 2 a.m. you're like, well, what am I going to do? And I'm like, well, I like making gelato. I love dogs. I want to surround myself with dogs. And then it just kind of hit. It was like my eureka moment, if you will. I'm like, I'm just going to go to a dog park and sell gelato to dogs for the summer. And that was my thing. And so literally the next day, I like ordered a little gelato cart. Orange is my favorite color. So of course it was orange. I love the word swell, always have. Like that whole ain't that swell. There's just something to it. And I love it. So I instantly knew what the brand was going to be. And like literally within 2 weeks, I was in the dog park because I already had my recipes. I didn't have any fancy packaging. And it was just going to be a summer project. And it was the most interesting 2 months of my life, I think, because the first couple of days were very humbling, coming from like a high fashion world and having somewhat of a reputation and people looking up to you and wanting to have meetings with you and whatnot. And now here I am in the dog park that first day behind my orange gelato cart. And quite frankly, half the people looked at me like I was insane. Like they're like, girl, what are you doing? Like, what is this? Right. And so, but coming back to the dog park day after day, because for the good interactions that I had with the customers, I loved it. And their dogs loved it, which I knew they would because my own dogs loved it too. Those people that were very skeptical at first, they came around and summer ended and pretty much people were asking me, well, now what? Because my plan was to go back to another corporate job. So I had some interviews lined up to like the local companies there in Seattle, like REI, Starbucks at the time. And I would get to like the final round of interviews and I just had this thing. I could feel it, this thing inside telling me, yeah, you could do this, but in the end, it's going to be the same thing. It's going to be a corporate job, just different product, different company. But here's this thing. Here's this like little dog gelato, happy little circle of joy, which is what I call it. Um, and I just kind of felt like this is my opportunity to like try it. If I don't go for it, I don't want to be one of those people in 20 years going, man, I wish I would have just went for it. It had a chance. And
Yeah.
so the good thing is I had a little bit of a severance because, Nordstrom is an amazing company. So it wasn't like I had no income all of a sudden. I was good for a couple months. And so, yeah, I just decided to go for it. And that's just how it started.
And I'm sure you'd look back on that summer very differently if you hadn't decided to go for it. It would have been more of like a summer fling that you always, wondered what if,
Right,
what if we just tried to make it work, right?
right.
There's something so poetic about, talking about this, not just because everybody loves gelato in the summer, but you also have this summer founding story and you know I think we all have those moments in time that in summers in life that define us, and then and to be able to take that experience from the summer and go back to school per se in the fall and say, what, I'm gonna really lean into this. I think it's so cool. And clearly you're very passionate about the product, passionate about dogs, and I think that's again and again you see in this industry, the products and solutions that are most successful are the ones that really come from the heart and address a need, and but are driven by that passion, from a smart, motivated founder. Um, yeah, I think it's super cool. And so you now have, so you started in Seattle.
Yep.
You said then you're now in Oregon, because manufacturing space and equipment was cheaper there. Now I know, for a lot of startup brands, they don't take on the capital expense of investing in their own manufacturing facilities and their own manufacturing equipment. They go to a co-manufacturer. But you were saying you had the experience of trying to get a co-manufacturer to faithfully replicate the product that you were making at home didn't go so well. So talk to me a little bit, when you were just starting out, like that summer, like was it the same packaging? Were you packaging by hand at home? And how did you scale to where you are today?
Oh yeah, no, that summer, I mean, I had just very generic packaging. I think that first dog park summer, I just wrote down what the flavors were on the cup with a Sharpie. I had two flavors, banana peanut butter and pumpkin cheddar, and I did actually have big and small sizes. Now we only have one size, but yeah, so it was all by hand, like all of it, right? And a lot of it right now still is. But so I was making it. I started out in my kitchen with a teeny tiny tabletop gelato maker. It's not, it makes nothing. It's tiny, but it was good enough for what I needed at the time in the dog park. But then as I started getting into some stores and then I got my first distributor, like that wasn't going to cut it. So I needed a gelato machine. Now, my issue was I had to have an income still for once the severance ran out, right? Like the dog park was amazingly fun, but I wasn't going to pay my mortgage with that. So I had to rent out my house, like via VRBO, Airbnb, just to get that supplemental income. So I had to move into my boyfriend's garage, and kind of like started out taking over a corner of his garage just so I can get like bigger equipment. And so I think over the next 3, 4 year it like I slowly took over his whole 2 car garage. Like it started with a little gelato machine, one chest freezer, then there was a 2 door freezer. And he's like, I call him MacGyver. It's his nickname. He has a tool shop. The man likes to work on things. And so little by little, his tool shop kind of like disappeared because then I had a walk-in freezer in there because it kept growing. And so that got to a point where it was just, I mean, that was not going to be feasible. I needed like a facility and I needed a team. I couldn't have all these people working in a garage, right? So I basically, what I did is I sold my own house in Seattle and I bought a factory in Oregon that has an apartment on top. It's in a beautiful location. So, I never regretted it. It's the most beautiful factory, I think, in all of the land, if you ask me. But so that's
Yeah.
what I had to do. And once I did that, I could really hire a crew and get like more equipment, like more walk-in freezers, like bigger gelato machines, like steam kettle. So even though the process is all still by hand, it's, it's all in bigger pots now. But to answer
Yeah.
your question on the co-packing, once I was in the garage still, realizing that this couldn't go on, I couldn't keep this up, those were the options, right? Either I get my own facility or somebody else is going to have to make it for me, or I cannot keep growing and meet this demand.
I mean,
And
so
so
how far into the journey are we talking here? So summer
I,
2016, you start in the dog park. How many years later are we talking here?
I think from the dog park, probably 2 to 2.5 years later.
Okay.
Because the dog park was in the summer, but I really, at that point, once I realized, okay, I'm going to do it, I'm going to go for it, I needed to get packaging and all that. I couldn't just have my generic packaging for the dog
Right.
park. So all that took a while. And then, I had to get that ready before I could really go out and try to sell at the store. So it took about a year or 9 months from the dog park to get in stores, right? So that's kind of, even though I started 10 years ago, selling retail, that's like 9 years ago. And so from the point where I started selling in stores, it was somewhere between a year and a year and a half that I like saw the writing on the wall, like this cannot long term. If I'm going to make this a real business, I got to expand, right? So the options were keep doing it myself or go to a co-packer. And so my opinion was if a co-packer can make it just as good as I can with the same quality where I don't have to compromise, then why wouldn't I? That would be ridiculous. They're set up for that. They've got the big
Yeah.
machines.
You don't have to take on, sell your house, buy a, a
Right.
factory. Right. Yeah.
I could
Makes
have
sense.
stayed where I
Yeah.
was. But actually tried, and co-packers are amazing, for the right product. That like they have the expertise, they've got the big machinery, they got the setup. But I tried too, and they couldn't do it because what I learned is that, to make it something complicated simple, when you make ice cream or gelato commercially, it's a bunch of machines that are connected with tubes, right? Because you got to cook it, then you got to cool it, and then it's got to go and basically the machine that's going to dispense it into the cups. All those things are connected with tubes, and those tubes are small. And my product has a very high viscosity because I use such limited ingredients and they're all like the whole foods, right? Like coconut milk, that's thick. Real bananas, that's thick. One ingredient peanut butter, we all know what that's like, right? Like that's like a chunk. So there's nothing in there that was like really fluid. So my options were to make it work with a co-packer, either really, really, really water it down or um, completely change the ingredients. And then I tried to work with some food scientists, and they're what they do is they make a product to your expectations, right? And they're basically, if you boil it down from their point of view, the expectations were it has to be safe for dogs, and it has to be fluid enough, thin enough to where it can fit through those tubes. So they were coming up with ingredients like chickpea and oils, and I don't know, like nothing that was like anything like my banana peanut butter gelato. So I decided, I'm like, okay, well, that's not going to work. So now we need plan B. And then plan B was to find a facility. And so that's the route I went. And, that's the route we committed to.
So cool. And I mean, you did this all, at least on the gelato side, you said, with no prior, food experience other than making gelato at home for your
Yep.
family. And you didn't use any, palatability testing or, you know, uh, anything. You just kind of knew what to make and they were a hit.
Yeah. As far as like palatability and flavors, like my process is always the same, right? I always start because I'm the first taste tester, right? So I'm always like, okay, what is good? Then you combine that with what do dogs like? And then the
Yeah.
third factor is like, well, what is safe for them? Because you can't
Yeah.
throw any ingredient in there that's good for us. And so then, you just play. Gelato is actually not that hard of a process, really. Where it gets tricky is when you buy gelato for people, it has a certain softness, right? That's kind of the difference between gelato and ice cream, not to get technical, but like it's served at a different temperature, it's softer.
Yeah.
Because we eat it with a spoon. A dog's not going to eat it with a spoon.
Right.
They're, part of the experience for them is the licking. So
Yeah,
my gelato is frozen hard on purpose so that they have that long lasting licking experience because that's
sure.
actually really soothing to them. So that's like an additional benefit. But that actually made everything quite a bit simpler because I didn't have to worry about some of the ratios that you have to worry about when you sell gelato for people that has to have that certain softness, consistency, can only be kept at certain temperatures, which would make it very difficult in transportation. So that was something, at least that,
Yeah.
was made it a little bit easier for me. So then it just became about the flavor profiles. And like I said, I'm the first taste tester. That's why we will never have any gelato with chicken, beef, lamb, or any of those things, because that just sounds disgusting to me. But there's a lot of dogs that are part of this, taste test thing. And it's important because some
Yeah.
dogs will like eat a shoe if you let them, right? Like my own
Mhm.
dog eats duck poop. I'm like, he is not necessarily the best, the best screener of a new flavor, but I always like look out for the dogs that are like the picky eaters, and they're the real taste testers. They like
Sure.
it. I know we're good.
Sure. Yeah, I will have to I have to get one so Peony can give it a try because at almost 12, she is definitely way more picky than she was when I got her at 2. So
Yeah.
I call her my big. Now, are they human grade as well? You mentioned you're the first taste tester. Do you market it as human grade or
I don't market it as human grade. All my ingredients are human grade, because I buy, premium coconut milk. I import it by the container now, which is crazy. Just think about that from Vietnam. I use real bananas. I use one ingredient peanut butter that is like, a human grade. Like everything is human grade. To me, I'm like, I'm not going to go through the hassle of having all those like certificates. In the end, mine is a simple product, right? I want there to be a very limited amount of ingredients so people can instantly look at the back of the cup and go, oh, okay, well, that's all good. There's no like tricky names, no chemicals, no, none of that. So I'm like, that's what it's about. So I didn't go through the hassle of like, putting human grade on there. Same with organic. Sometimes,
Yep.
because it kind of depends when you buy fruit. Sometimes I can get the organic fruit, sometimes I can't. And I'm like, I'm not going to put it on there. I'm just going to keep it simple. And that's all there is to it.
Yep. No, I mean I years ago I before I got it well, in between my first consulting job and my second stint in consulting from uh, 2008 to 2009, I worked in the wine industry in a wine shop in Boston, and I used to have people come in all the time looking for organic or biodynamic wines. But for the same reasons you just described, a lot of wineries, although they ascribe to organic, production practices and principles, they don't want to be certified organic because it hamstrings them if anything goes wrong. And similar, I'm sure you don't want to be locked into having to get, organic fruits and vegetables if your, supply goes, then you have to change your packaging if the supply
Yep.
gets interrupted and things like that. Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense.
And
Now,
that's happened, right? Like since, with COVID and everything, supply became an issue and
yeah,
having options was really important. So
yeah, yeah. Now, when you make gelato for your family, is it dairy based and you switch to coconut milk for dogs specifically, or do you do coconut milk for your own gelato at home?
no, it's dairy based, but to be honest, I have not made gelato for my family in a long time because it's one of those things when that's what you do day in and day out. It's like that's the
Yep,
last thing I want to do.
yep,
And so, my boyfriend every now and then he'll just actually just come and get a cup of banana peanut butter because it's good. And that's what's available.
yeah.
So
And so you can eat it, you're just not marketing it as human grade. But if you wanted to
yeah,
share a cup with your dog,
yeah,
no
you could.
issues.
It's just not as sweet, right? Because I don't
Yeah,
use simple sugars. I only use honey or molasses. And remember, it's frozen rock hard on purpose for the dog. So you're gonna
right.
have to like lick it out of the cup. There's no spooning it, but they're tasty. They're pretty tasty.
That's cool. That's cool. So, all right. So we're 2016, you start. We were, now 2018, 2019, you're getting into stores, you've got your packaging. You're considering buying going to a co-manufacturer, buying a factory. What was the journey like first getting into stores, what were you doing for distribution back then? Because that's the other thing that I think is really interesting about your product is that across the industry, we see right now um, more and more startup pets are going away from the distributor route, going away from the independent pet channel. They're focusing on Chewy, on Amazon, on D2C, on their own websites to gain visibility and build a brand. Just because they don't want, to have the margins taken out, and in some places, independent pet isn't really adapting to the needs of the consumer to be able to order online and pick up in store or have it delivered via DoorDash or Instacart or things like that. In the last few years, I think we've seen, at Global Pet, at Super Zoo, that some brands are kind of leaning into that view and not prioritizing the independent pet channel as much as they once did. Clearly, you made independent pet the foundation of your brand. Um, and obviously, you have that unique distribution challenge of, hey, this is frozen rock hard. So, and that is tricky logistics. But talk to us a little bit about how you navigated that and where, what's informed your philosophies.
Yeah, so since I mean, I literally started it from nothing, right? And because I did not, which also meant I didn't have starting capital. It was just kind of like, start slow and build as you go. So all the machinery that I bought was like used, because couldn't quite afford to buy everything brand new because the stuff's expensive. But what it did, being in such a small scale setup, is it really allowed me to go like basically one retailer at a time. Like for that whole first summer was dog park, right? And then, being in Seattle, come October, you are not going to be in the dog park because it will be raining. There will be nobody there, and my cart would get stuck in the mud. So that was not going to happen. So I had that all that time to like develop packaging and all that and think about my strategy. And so then the next summer, simultaneously, while I was taking basically my show on the road, like I had a cooler in the trunk with dry ice and my pretty brand new packaging. And I would just like drive to stores. And then in the weekend, I would do events, just to get the brand going and get some social media going and get, just to get it
Yeah.
going, basically. And that was just, I mean, that was really small scale. But what happened is lucky break, one event, there was somebody there who was a manager of store in Seattle, and she was like, "Oh my God, I want this. How soon can I have it?" And I was like, "Well, I need to wait for my packaging to ship," because this was like in the beginning. So I had one store right away, and because I had that one store lined up, once I delivered there, I had credibility. And then, somebody else who was kind of in the neighborhood was like, "Well, if they have it, we want it." And so I pretty quickly between Oregon and Washington, actually, because my boyfriend had a vacation home here already in Oregon, so we were coming here. And I would do my road show, as I call it, with my cooler in the trunk and just stop at stores. And so then I had 10 stores. And then I got a local small chain. They had 12, 14 stores or something at the time in Seattle. And then they wanted it. And then once I got them, well, then I realized that, well, I can't make these deliveries by myself because Seattle traffic is horrendous. It's going to take me a day just to deliver to like 5 stores. And so then I had some clouds to go to a distributor, a local distributor, because it's kind of that whole chicken egg thing, right? Like if you don't have a distributor, you can't get it to the stores. But if you don't have any distributor, doesn't want to take a chance. So there really wasn't a workaround. I just had to work the circuit basically on how it was. But then once I got that first distributor, well, now I was opened up to, a whole network of stores in Oregon and Washington. And that really for the that first year that was my big focus, and just focusing on, yeah, on independent pet stores. Because at that time, there really wasn't any direct to customer. Like Chewy didn't exist yet then. I think it came just a couple of years after that, but they didn't exist yet. And shipping direct to customer was just, I mean, unheard of because everything would, and it's still that way to a point. I mean, I have to ship on dry ice. My stuff can't melt, right? And dry
Right.
ice evaporates. So that means you guys ship it overnight. And it's really prohibitive, the cost
Yeah.
of that. So it
Oh yeah.
wasn't even an option. So where I started, I mean, that was it. It was just, do you go for independent pet stores or do you try to get into the Petcos and PetSmarts of the world? But I did not have the facility to even make enough for a Petco or a PetSmart. So for
Right.
me, there was no choice. I had to start that way. Now the industry evolved and now we're in a different place, right?
I mean, if you were starting out today, do you feel like you'd take a different approach?
That is a very good question. Honestly, I think not. Um, Hindsight is perfect though, right? But if I
Yeah.
put myself in that same position where you can start out from different places. Either you raise capital and then you can go big, or you decide to build it up from small. And I still think for a product like mine with that kind of quality, where really you have to earn your reputation as a brand, and that happens one customer at one store at a time. I don't think I necessarily would do it different. I would probably move faster. I would still start there and move faster. Um, but I don't
Yeah.
regret the route that I've taken. I think it served me well
Clearly not. I mean,
for my product.
1,600 stores, and yeah, I just look at it. We see with Farmer's Dog and some of the other frozen, fresh frozen products that there's minimum order requirements. You have to hit that $150 box price tag. I was talking uh, with Brad Barron at Spot Farm Full Moon at Global Pet, and he was saying, it's amazing. Chewy will ship a single bag of our, Full Moon individually frozen product, but on our website, D2C, we won't ship without a 3 bag minimum order. And, it does seem like Chewy is really leaning hard into this single bag delivery of frozen products and must just kind of be eating it. The costs on the back end is sort of a learning exercise to capture that market. But, um, on the flip side of it, if you have a frozen product or, if you're a fresh pet, for example, where the product can't be frozen, I mean, it just introduces this huge amount of complexity. Um, and I think, a big part of why Freshpet has stayed purely in FDM is that they can kind of leverage, grocery store distribution. And it's the same thing that Spot Farm does. Purdue is their Full Moon, they're an offshoot of Purdue, so they can ship to grocery to FDM on the same trucks that are carrying the Purdue chicken. Um, and yeah, but for, a smaller startup brand, it's impressive to see that you've been able to scale it as big as you have. Now, so you mentioned you got a local distributor in Seattle, but now you're in 1,600 stores. So what distributors are you working with nationally?
Well, we have about six distributors now, actually. So we don't just have the one anymore. We have six distributors. I don't right now have one national distributor because, you know, uh, with the exception of where you live, Peter, we are distributed everywhere except for Alaska and Hawaii because, that with frozen, that's a whole other conundrum.
What's the fourth state? So it's Vermont, Alaska, Hawaii, and who else do we get?
Oh God, I have to get my map out. Hang on a second, I'm
Wyoming?
terrible. Uh, Vermont, yes, Maine, New Hampshire, the tippy tip. I have to go
Okay.
look for that.
Okay. Well, if we're in there with Maine and New Hampshire, I don't feel so bad.
No,
Uh,
no, no. It's because my distributor, the ones that I have, they don't go there. They
yeah.
basically cut it off right before Vermont, and then there's another really small local distributor. But the reality is, you guys are colder than Florida, which we
Yeah.
know, which means your summers are shorter. And so that is a small distributor. And for us here again, because the distribution issue comes up, right? You have to
Yeah.
make it worth their while. Freezer space is finite. They
Yep.
need stuff that turns.
Hmm.
So for a really small distributor to take on a seasonal brand, that like really, I mean, our sales start going up in April. Poof, that's when it goes up, and then October it starts to come down. Now that's because of the people's limitations, right? Because dogs don't care; they will eat gelato when it snows, but until they get their own credit card, um, their mom and dad are still the ones buying it, and so they kind of buy it seasonally. So
Yeah.
it's a challenge getting into that little neck of the woods, but we have done some things like we now not only have gelato, we only have cupcakes, and those are not seasonal, and those are still pretty new. So as that product line like takes off more, then I see more of a stabilization over the year. So it's not just such a spike during the spring, summer, and early fall. And that should help to get me there. But yes, it's pretty much all seasonal distributors. Uh, I was with Animal Supply, which that was the biggest national distributor. They of course went under, so I was counted my
Yeah.
lucky stars that I had seasonal distribution. Unlike some brands who lost big, because you lose a chunk of your network.
Yeah.
Um, so
And
we're looking into that again. I think as we get in, there's still some opportunity within the country for there's some bigger chains that we're approaching and trying to get into their freezers, which we're making actually it's looking pretty positive. So once that happens, then another national distributor makes sense just because then that chain only has to work with one distributor versus four.
right.
So I see that in the near future, but for now, with the exception of your neck of the woods, we're served pretty well all over the country.
Well, we'll keep an eye out. And you have the pupcakes now too, so that kind of tapping into that desire to kind of celebrate and have a birthday cake for your dog and I saw you also have the toppers, so kind of diversifying the portfolio so that you're not just seeing that seasonal demand
Yep.
or demand confined to warm weather states. No, it's really cool. It's really cool. Now, you mentioned, I know we've got Super Zoo coming up here in a little bit. You have been to Super Zoo before. You were at Global this spring, or
Last year, the last couple of years, we were at Global.
okay.
Not this year. This year, I
Okay.
changed strategy.
Talk to us about that.
So the industry is changing, which we all know. Everybody knows that, right? It's a little challenging right now to see totally where it's going. And everything still has a place. But like you said before, where before it used to be just like either independent pet stores or the big brick and mortar stores, right? Like Petco, PetSmart, like that was kind of it.
Hmm.
That's where you were buying the stuff. But now buying online is a reality and a preferred choice for a lot of people. So now things become more challenging. And it's kind of the same with these big shows like Global and Super Zoo. Now, there is a place for that because a lot of stores still go there. But for a brand like mine, I think it's not really feasible to just go every year when I don't even know how many booths there are there. Thousands? I mean,
Thousands. Oh,
it's insane. And for having been a buyer before at Nordstrom, I know how this works, right? When you're a buyer, especially when you're a buyer, Nordstrom buyer is probably similar to like if you are a Pet Supply Plus buyer or whatever. When you have that many stores, like you
yeah.
cover your name tag because people will attack you because they all want to be in your stores. So the buyers have so much ground to cover in order to stand out, you need kind of a big booth. The big booths are really expensive. They're just as expensive for me as for a brand like Open Farms or Stella and Chewy's or whatever. Like a big brand, they pay the exact same as me. Yet they're going to
On a per
get
square foot basis, right?
what's that?
On a per square foot basis,
Per
right?
square foot base. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, exactly. And so that is a hard cost to
Yeah.
offset, right? Because in the end, my gelatos are, even though they are a very premium product, and I like to call them aspirational luxury, um, it's still a very low MSRP compared to a big bag of food. So they're
Right.
going to come out with hundreds of thousands of dollars of sales out of these trade shows. Well, I'm lucky if I recover the cost of the booth. So, in my opinion, for a product like mine, it's like if you're going to do it, you do it right. So, if I have a new product that I want to show to a lot of people at the same time, yeah, absolutely, it makes sense. But I don't feel like it's something that I have to do every year. And I learned that last year at Super Zoo. The display was good. I put a lot of effort in my booth, and that's the merchant in me. That's the fashionista in me. To me, it's like if you're gonna go, you got to make them look. I will not have a booth that looks like everybody else because then really, what's the point? Then it's just a total. waste of money, in my opinion. It's like if I'm going to go, I'm going to stand out. So there's a lot of work and effort and money that goes into that. And it has to be a balance of like, is it worth the investment for what I'm going to get out of it? So for
Yeah.
me, it's not going to be something that I'm going to do every year, but I'll do it when it's right. It was
And,
important.
and-
It was important when I did it a couple of years ago when I was looking for distribution. Then it was important.
yeah. Now you
Because
have
how
it.
else,
And
yeah, how
yeah.
else are we going to see what you're about as a brand, right? Like I can send pictures, but like with my booth, you step into my booth and it's like a little swell world. And you know, this is different. You know, this product stands out. It's going to stand out in the booth. It's going to stand out in the freezer. So I had to make people see. So there's definitely reasons for people to go to these shows. I just think every brand has to like weigh that for themselves, like when you
Oh,
go and when you don't go.
I mean, no doubt. I mean, I definitely, I've had this contrast before. Different conferences have different purposes, and you know, for me, I'm at Super Zoo and Global every year because I need to see trend wise what is happening, in the industry. What are brands moving towards, what are the key issues? What are people thinking about? But it is a whirlwind 3 days and I love it, but I come away every year being like, wow, I did not get to talk to everybody I wanted to talk to. I did not get to see everything that I wanted to see. Um, and you know and you get back from the show and life moves on, and it does make it difficult to make sure that you're maximizing that investment in going to the conference. And that's just for me as an attendee. And I think you're not alone in, I mean, there's smaller conferences, where it's much more focused networking. There's time for longer in-person discussions because you're not trying to see so much. But those bigger shows, like, yes, they're great for seeing, at least from my perspective, for seeing what's out there, what direction is the industry headed in, what trends, what food formats are we latching onto, what are we doing in terms of treats, what's the major focus from a food perspective. Is it fresh? Is it fresh frozen? Is it fresh shelf stable? Are we looking at kibble with inclusions and minimally processed and things like that? That all bubbles up, but yeah, I would agree, to be discovered as a new, smaller, startup brand, it is difficult because you're not going to have the biggest booth. You're not going to have a giant, multi-level, booth that, I mean, the bigger brands, they put at least $250,000 into their booths. Um,
Now,
and
I do think there's things you can do if you go for as a first timer. But I think, and I'm glad in a way that I waited. So I had a couple of years to think about how I was going to tackle these shows. But there is things like a new product showcase.
yep,
You at least at Global, and there is I forget what the section is like. It's not the up and comers, new vendors, I guess.
yep,
You do get a good, and everybody walks those because, like you said, they want to see what's new. But man, if you're gonna do it, you better think ahead and make them look. Like I see so many brands and I'm like, you spent all this money and then this is what you did. I'm like, come on, you got to make them look. You
yeah,
got to make them look. That is like rule one. So that's challenging, but I think there is still opportunity for that. Like if that's why I said in hindsight, like if I would have done anything different, I would have done things faster. I probably would have done global a couple of years before I did my first global, but then at the same time, waiting gave me the chance to really think through like how am I going to make this booth stand out? And it did. Like my first global show, my boyfriend and I were literally pouring cement in buckets in the hotel room, like concrete, because I needed like poles for my background. Because again, I don't have an endless budget. So everything had to be like hand done. But, you had to make it count. And we did it. So, yeah.
that's awesome. And I don't think you're alone in being select. I mean, you see it with the bigger brands. I mean, Stella and Chewy didn't show up at Super Zoo last year. They weren't at Global this spring. Going back to Global 2025, they really scaled down the size of their booth. The Honest Kitchen, they only do Super Zoo now because they're a West Coast based organization, and you know, they decided we're going to travel from San Diego to Vegas, and that's a lot easier. And, we're going to have one show a year where we show off our new products. And, I think it is interesting, and does speak to the changing dynamics of, where, how are you going to best position your business to succeed, and what's the right model for you? Do you want to lean into independent and in that channel? Do you want to target a PetSmart or Petco? Do you know that their buyers are going to be there? It's not like they have booths. You definitely see at those shows, you see those teams, the PetSmart, the Costco, the Walmart, all the buyer teams are meeting, but they're setting up meetings well in advance.
Right.
And so it's not like a show that you go to hoping that you're going to bump into them. It's,
No. Their
and
days are planned. Their time is planned.
oh yeah, 100%. But I mean, you see the shifting dynamics. I mean, I was talking to Open Farm at Global, and they said explicitly their focus was going to be on advertising to drive demand into neighborhood pet.
Yeah.
And 2 months later, they announced that they're going into PetSmart. And you look at it and you're like, yeah, okay, it makes sense. Like if you're gonna grow, you got to get bigger. But there is this real tension when you break channel. Um, there is that insularity of like the neighborhood independent pet space that, you know, it's a common marketing tactic for smaller brands that haven't gotten to that level yet of like
Yeah.
no Amazon, no Chewy, no big box, right? And that makes you attractive to the neighborhood pet stores because they're able to offer something that none of the big guys are. And
Yeah.
it's a very interesting you know point of tension, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah. And I think it's such an interesting point in time too, because we're like on the edge. Something is going to shift and something's going to change, and nobody really knows what it is, right? Because where before it was all about the shows, like we just talked about, now it's not all about those shows anymore because they don't always make sense for everybody. But then what is it? Because not everybody has Open Farms marketing budget. I don't. So, but here's one thing I know. This is what I learned, not just from being in pet, but even with Nordstrom. Like customer loyalty happens through moments, memorable experiences. Like ingredients can make a product, right? But I feel like a memorable experience makes a brand. So for me, I don't have this equation quite solved yet, but I kind of know which direction it needs to go. Like for my brand, it is about that moment that the customer has with their dog. And how do I funnel my resources into that? How do I get out there instead of just focusing on doing all these shows? For a couple of years, that made total sense. New distribution, new products, whatnot. But now it's like, how do I shift that marketing to where I create the demand so there's a pull for my product and me not having to push because I'm not promotional. I don't do discounts. I'm not in that business.
Yeah.
So,
And what is the MSRP on your product, by the way?
$6.99 for a gelato
Okay.
is our
Yeah.
suggested retail. Yeah. And I work with a low margin for myself. It's a choice that I made. I decided that because of the integrity of the ingredients and the process, there is still a limit that people will pay for a gelato. Let's be real, right? You got to be realistic. Like I can't just say, well, it costs this much, it's got to cost that much for the customer. No, there is a limit to what they will pay. So I work backwards. So my margins are naturally smaller, which means that I don't do discounts. I'm not that kind of brand. And
No.
my competition can out discount themselves all they want. That's okay because I'm not going to compromise on my ingredients. I'm not going to compromise on my packaging, and I'm not going to compromise on my process. And that's what we stand for. So it's a choice.
And I
Um,
mean, do you feel like you have that many I mean, dog gelato, it's definitely niche. I mean, who do you just, when you think about your competition at night, who do you think of?
well, we have there's some competition in the field. They're not dog gelato, of course, but they're like a dog frozen treat, right? Like even Ben and
Yeah,
Jerry's. Look at Ben and Jerry's. They came
yeah,
out with a dog ice cream.
that's true.
Which interesting, I think. I mean, I don't blame them, makes total sense, but then I can tell that they probably worked with a food scientist when I look at the ingredients that are in there. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that sounds familiar. But Yes, there's probably like three or four real competitors in the space that have like a frozen yogurt, frozen, actually five, frozen yogurt, frozen dessert, frozen, because you can't call technically ice cream is one of those protected terms. So you can't just call something ice cream. It has to have a certain amount of butter fat, like all those things. So that's why you don't see a lot of those products called dog ice cream. You just can't. But yeah, it's not a big competitors pool, but remember, freezer space is tight. And
Yeah.
to convince a store, they don't need five. In my opinion, they need two. They definitely need Swell. And then, yeah, give them another option. The consumer should always have a choice. You should never just dictate with one product, right? So but it is a tough spot, and I do see that pretty much all of my competition go the discount route, and I say good for you, go do it. It's a conscious choice. I will not do it because I can't. For one thing, I would have to compromise. I could not stay in business and keep my ingredients the quality that they are and not water it down or keep the packaging, and my packaging is like my number one salesperson, to be honest. um
Yeah, it
Keep
does.
the
It
process.
looks really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you've got banana peanut butter, pumpkin cheddar, sweet potato molasses, a blackberry flavored My Chill Time. Does that have CBD in it? Or
What's that?
does the My Chill Time have like a calming like CBD or anything?
Yes. It's got chamomile tea and passion flower tea. And then we have a triple berry one, which is actually our best seller because that's the bark day gelato. And that, that's the top dog right there. That is a best seller. But that's got like triple berries. It's delicious. But
Yeah.
again, with that one, it's all the packaging that like drives it too, right? Because it's like,
Mhm.
it's my bark day. Like we're celebrating. This is fun.
Yep. And then you got a spiced pumpkin nog for dogs. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, all very well thought out, very well done. I think, really we do you see it. You see that, desire to want to celebrate your dog and for a lot of it, you're not going to give them a human cake. And, I mean, Peony's birthday every year, I usually cook her like a salmon fillet and put a little candle in it. And, um, but, we get gelato up here. I could do that too.
Make your life a lot easier.
Yeah, it would. What do you see as kind of the next big step? You mentioned you kind of want to target your trade show appearances and things like that. What I know you have the cupcakes, you've got the toppers, but what's the next evolution for the business? Is it getting into Amazon, Chewy, potentially one of the big box stores? Is it partnering with somebody to, get access to a new customer base? What?
I think it's definitely, we have some opportunities still in brick and mortar. There's a couple of big chains in the country that I'm targeting, and I think we're making a lot of progress on, and that will happen in the near future. But then beyond that, the whole direct to customer it's a very interesting market because it's not a feud. Feud is not the right word, but the independent pet stores are nervous about the whole direct to customer
Hmm.
situation. Of course, it makes sense, right? I probably would be too. The future for independent pet stores, for them to survive, in my opinion, is they have to offer the customer an experience. Oh my God, let's go to Dog River here in town because when we go there, it's fun. And people go, hey, Lucky, how are you doing? Like they know you. Your dog is felt like is treated like family, and it's an experience. It's a happy experience. They will go back for that. They cannot get that from direct to customer. I mean, you can put in a card, but you can't put that in a box. You just can't.
Right.
So there is a future for that. And my product belongs there because they also have the salespeople that can talk about the product and like, oh my God, it's their birthday. We have got the product for that. You need it. It's my birthday gelato, right? Like it's an experience. So there's that. Then there is the direct to customer market, which cannot be ignored because it keeps growing, 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 growing. Now, never say never. I learned that a long time ago. So I don't want to say I'm not going to sell on Amazon. I'm not going to sell on Chewy. Who knows? Down the line, that might happen. That is not where my immediate focus is, but where I do think there's opportunity is there is a a whole slew of direct to customer brands. Like there's so many now. It's just not the farmer's dog anymore. There's
No, it's
Ollie, there's
Nom
Nom
Nom.
Nom, there's We Feed Raw. I mean, you name there's tons that
Oh
keep
yeah.
popping up because it's a good market. People like the convenience. But I think that there's an ultimate opportunity there for, I mean, they have subscription boxes. They know when the dog's birthday is. When it's their dog's birthday, pop in it's my birthday gelato. How exciting is that customer going to be when they're open the box and and they're already shipping frozen. They've got it figured out. They just need to pop in my thing. And then the customer's going to be like, oh my God, they
Yeah.
remembered. Oh my God, look at this. And it's such a shareable moment. It's a win-win for everybody because now the customer's going to share on social media and be like, how fun is, whether it's the farmer's dog or We Feed Raw or Ollie, whatever, how great are they? Look at this. They remembered. They put this in just for my dog. Handwritten cards are great, but that fleets, right? A dog licking the gelato, you're holding the cup, you're looking them in the eye, you're seeing the joy, you're feeling the love. It's this little vicious circle of an emotional moment, which creates a loyal customer. So I think there's opportunity there, not so much to sell it on their platforms.
Just to sell it to them and let them use it as
Exactly.
a point of differentiation of
Yeah, yeah, like throw it in every now and then when the customer's not expecting it. That moment of
and
surprise and delight is so priceless.
and that probably fits your model a little bit better than a D2C option, even if it is through an Amazon or Chewy, because I can't imagine people necessarily buying dog gelato in bulk. Would you say that more on, maybe they buy like two or three at a pet store,
Yeah,
but I would guess that most of the time you're selling a single unit because somebody has a special occasion to celebrate with their pet or
yeah.
they want a feel good one-off treat. It's not something, that they are stocking up to give to their dog every day.
No, and here's the reality, Peter, and I keep, even to this day, I have to keep reminding myself on it. I don't live in the real world. I have two walk-in freezers. I have a reefer outside. I have those big commercial two-door freezers. I got freezer space. But a lot of people have the little freezer that's on top of the fridge. That
Yep.
doesn't fit very much. Not even everybody has a chest freezer. And I forget that all the time. So I actually have this little post-it that says freezer space is finite, just to remind myself of that. But to your
And that's
point,
true in the retailer
if,
and at home. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, if that's your situation, you're not going to buy 12 gelatos because that doesn't make your dog, for one, it's still a treat, right? Let's be real. Even though they would like to have one every day, we shouldn't be eating ice cream every day either. It's a treat. So you're not going to have 12 gelatos taking up room in your precious little freezer where you need to keep some of your fresh fruit. If you're feeding raw, well, if you're feeding raw, you probably have a chest freezer, but a lot of people have those limitations. So therefore, they are not going to place individual orders for me to ship direct to customer. So therefore, it doesn't make any sense because the
Right.
orders would never justify the price of the dry ice shipping. Um, but a direct to customer brand that's doing this day in and day out, they're already doing it. For them to throw in one gelato is nothing. It's like small investment on their part, huge win as far as like creating that memorable moment and customer loyalty and all the stuff that comes with it.
Have
And
you
for
had any of those
me, it's
conversations
easier.
yet?
Yeah,
Any have you had conversations with any of those brands yet about
I'm starting.
okay.
It's hard to get a hold of these people because a lot of these brands are like, venture capital, and so and I've learned this, like they live on LinkedIn. While my focus on social media has all been Instagram, because it's all about the brand and the dog licking the gelato and showing the moment and showing the joy. And so to be
You're
honest, like
getting
I did
you're
nothing
getting the
with my link.
consumer there though.
What's
Yeah.
that?
You're getting the consumer there, not
Absolutely.
the
Yeah.
business. Yep.
Yeah.
A
So
hundred percent.
yeah, so you got to do both. And then I learned that like, oh wow, I actually need to work on LinkedIn, like a founder's profile and like so I can try to talk to those people. So yes, those conversations have started. I think it's a great opportunity. I'm just, I just got to be persistent, but I am persistent. So
If you haven't, you should reach out to Jessica McCarthy. She was on a few episodes ago, and we did a whole episode about LinkedIn marketing for independent pet and pet food brands. And she, we definitely do the competitive strategy, and we dabble in the social media strategy. I like to think I'm okay at LinkedIn, but Yeah, she was on and we had a great discussion about, leveraging LinkedIn as a marketing tool for pet and um, might be somebody good for you to touch base with.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's the new, like, I just completely ignored it and I had nothing on there. To me, LinkedIn was like, oh yeah, that's when you start looking for a job and I'm plenty busy. I don't need another job. And so then I realized like, oh wow, this is a whole other world that I wasn't even playing in. And so I'm starting to focus some of my time there.
Yeah, no, I've kept pet working almost exclusive. We're on YouTube, but I haven't, the advice I got was focus on one channel and do one channel well. And my audience largely lives on LinkedIn because we're
Yeah.
consulting, with all these, I do our pet care and animal health practice, but I also do our finance and insurance practice as well as our tech practice. So that's, where I'm selling on the consulting side of things, that's my audience right there. And then this podcast is much more about I like to offer, tips for responsible pet ownership and hopefully things that, help everyday pet parents take care of their animals better. That's certainly a goal, but the people I'm talking to are people who are in the business of pet care and animal health and doing cool things. And so yeah, we've kept it there and uh, but it
That's where
is
I found you.
good. It's working. It's
Yep.
working. This is evidence. So, but yeah. Well, Debbie, this has been awesome. I'm super glad to have you on and to learn more about your story and to hear about what might be coming next. We'll definitely be keeping an eye out and hopefully, if not this year, I know you said you're not going to be at Super Zoo this year, but hopefully we'll see you. We had a chance to bump into each other in person at a show one of these days and definitely message me if and when Vermont gets added to the list, or I'll
Oh, will
message you
will
the next
do.
time I'm up in Canada and I find your product up there.
Yeah. Yeah. Just go look on the website. You can put in your zip code or whatever. You can see whoever's closest. For now, that'll be a couple of 100 miles away. But as we make progress, you can see it there.
Let me see. We'll put this in right now. Looks like we have Animalerie Regne Animal in Bromont, which is 60 miles away.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not bad. That's just up
Road
over the
trip.
border. Yeah, I'm sure I can find an excuse to go to Montreal at some point.
Yeah.
Always seeing concerts up there. So
Yeah.
I've got a
Yeah.
big love for Canada, even though the Tragically Hip are no longer playing. A lot of my favorite bands are Canadian. The Hip,
Mhm.
Sam Roberts, the Arkells. The good music coming out of Canada, and so many people in the U.S. just don't know it.
Yeah, I love Canada's awesome. I mean, that was such a celebration when we got into that market. That was huge.
Yeah, no, I mean it's been fun, having growing up in a border state here up north and being in a border state for the last 17 years since I moved back. So, yeah, I'll have to make a trip up there and we'll check out the gelato soon. But on behalf of Debbie, everybody, this is Peter Kenseth with Pet Working. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen, and we will talk to you all again soon.